Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Box, and we are a day after Rassie Erasmus named his first Springboks side of the year. Not an official test match on Saturday up against the Barbarians, but we've picked a side which could very well look like a test team. But the fact that there are 4 uncapped players means that there is some opportunities being given out to players to sort of prove their worth. And a Barbarians game is the perfect game to do that because, as mentioned, it doesn't count as a test. So there will not be a capped Bok this weekend. They'll not be able to, for example, put on their Bok Blazer, which you can only do once you've officially gotten a test cap. But the fact that there are some uncapped players means that we are starting to sort of continue building depth. And I think all 4 players have got potentially very big Springbok futures ahead of them. It's just not a case of we're down a few players, therefore we kind of just need to get a team in. No, this is very much looking at players who could form a key part of the 2027 Rugby World Cup squad. And I think specifically the fact that 3 players, and for me, are in 2 inverted commas prime positions, sort of maybe demonstrates that. And very excited to see how these sort of players put their hands up and whether we might actually see them next week against Italy, for example. I would probably definitely see them against Georgia. I think if they don't get capped in the next 2 weeks against Italy, I think we'll definitely see these 4 players probably all get capped up against Georgia in a little under a month's time. But today I want to talk about the players who aren't involved because, again, this is an opportunity to integrate certain players and give some players an opportunity. And there are some players that are not involved that there might be some question marks about. Before we do it, please do smash the like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. So basically what we're seeing this weekend is a mix of non-Bulls players, first for a start, only 1 Bulls player involved, so we've taken those out. Not too many overseas-based players in Europe, for example. It is basically a Japan-based team, and then a mixture of players from the Sharks, Lions, and the Stormers. The big reason for the Japanese-based players sort of playing is because of the fact they haven't played games in a while. The Japanese season finished about a month ago, and a lot of these players have not actually been on a rugby field in a match situation and might be lacking a little bit of match sharpness. And this is the perfect opportunity for them to sort of get that. And that's why it is very much dominated by a lot of first-team players who are based in Japan. But even then, there are still some players who are missing out. So let's go through it, shall we? First of all, Edwill van der Merwe, the first of our 5 players that we're sort of talking about potentially missing out. And I'm surprised, to be perfectly honest. Like, I understand wanting to give Ches and Colby and Kurt Lawrence a game time. Again, they haven't played in a while. But for me, Edwill van der Merwe is probably going to be our 3rd choice wing moving forward. You know, I think you've got Kurt Lawrence, Ches and Colby, age profile-wise, they'll make the next World Cup. Maximum Pimpy, he's hanging on at the moment, putting in good performances, keeping himself in the mix. But he's going to be 37 at the next World Cup. And you sort of think, surely probably won't maybe be involved. This man, however, is in the same sort of age profile as your Kurt Lawrence's and Ches and Colby's. He's good enough. You know, I mean, he had a man of the match performance last year on debut, albeit against a weakened Welsh side. Not a weakened Welsh side, but a weak Welsh side. But he just looked so natural in the test game. And unfortunately, due to injury, he didn't get to add to that caps. And he's been involved back in the Box squad. And I think this would have been a perfect opportunity to have continued exploring him as an option. So he was a bit of a surprise not to be involved. I'm saying like a Cheston Colby, I don't think really needs to get sort of back to match sharpness. He's one of the best players in the world. And he kind of always seems to be at that level whenever he does play. So this is probably the first sort of maybe surprising selection. But I think if it was, I don't think any other South African-based wing would have started ahead of him this weekend, for example. It is purely to get those Japanese-based players a go. But I do expect to see him at least against Georgia. And I think he's going to play at least 3 or 4 tests across the year. Then we've got this man, now also very interestingly left out because he is based in Japan. Last year, he had a couple of injury issues, but was left out as well in August. And we've not seen him play in the green and gold for a while. Based on the kind of the logic we just saw with Ches and Colby, Kurt Lawrence here, Damon Delendes, Jesse Creels, this would have been the perfect opportunity to have given him game time. And yet, we've gone with an SA-based scrum-half starting and a European-based scrum-half coming off the bench in the form of Kobus Reinach and Morne van den Berg. We're not entirely sure if Grant Williams, for example, is fit. So there's 2 ways to kind of look at it. This weekend is an opportunity for Morne van den Berg and Kobus Reinach to get to game time. Next week, we'll probably potentially see Faf de Klerk start, Grant Williams coming off the bench. There could basically be that plan. So as far as we know, they might even consider Faf de Klerk still their number 1 scrum-half option. But the other thing is maybe he's not. Maybe he's fallen down the pecking order and maybe they are looking at genuine replacements. And looking at the fact that Kobus Ryan potentially is ahead of him, and maybe Morne van den Berg might start to get more opportunities, given the fact that he'll probably be on the plane to the World Cup in the next few years at this potential rate. So this is a strange absentee in the game, given the fact that so many Japan-based Boks are in. I think it's only him, Jasper Wiese, Peter Toy's currently injured, but I want to say it's only him and Jasper Wiese who are actually the Japan-based Boks not playing this weekend. So it is a strange exclusion. I hope to see him again, but I'll be interested to sort of see. I think he's somebody who's on the fringes at the moment of the squad, and we're not quite sure where he sort of stands with Rassie Erasmus and his management. Moving to number 3, Canan Moodie. Again, no Bulls players involved, so that's probably the big sort of absentee, but a very interesting season ahead, I think, for Canan Moodie, because if you ask me, I would probably pick Edwill van der Merwe ahead of him right now. Ethan Hooker's had a really good season. He's still one of the youngest players in the squad, and he's a World Cup winner. I mean, this is a player who went to the World Cup last year. However, post-World Cup, he struggled a little bit because when you sort of burst through as a youngster, you're very much an unknown. And I think that he was just such a high threshold at such a young age. We're kind of sort of taken aback. He's now having to sort of adapt himself now to players who kind of are ready for him and have done a bit more research. So I think he's got a very important year or two ahead of him because personally, I think there are players at the moment who are playing better, but his threshold is just so high. I also wonder, what is going to be his role for the Boks? Are they looking at him as a potential 13 option? Is he a 13, 14 option, or is he just an 11, 14 option? And given the fact that Lekanya, for example, has gone back injured, big opportunity, I think, for Canan Moodie to start putting his hand up. But I think he's going to be competing up against somebody else who we're going to mention very shortly. So Canan Moodie needs to try and find himself more opportunities to play this year, and he's got to start banging that door down because I think at the moment he's starting to become a little bit of a forgotten entity within that Boks squad. This man over here could be one of the reasons as well. Ethan Hooker voted the Sharks fans player of the season recently, and whilst he played mostly on the wing for the Sharks and did a very good job, the Boks very much view him as an outside center option, and that versatility of being able to play inside, outside center as well as the wing means that he is going to have a huge future in that Boks setup because he is so versatile. Again, you think, look at this weekend, so much experience. Could we have put him at outside center, for example? Could this have been an opportunity to have blooded him in a Springbok environment? I mean, he was called up last year into squads, by the way, not just the lineman caps, into squads last year. Was one of the few people not to have gotten a test cap, and went back to the Sharks, looked hungrier than ever, had a great season, and yet didn't quite get the opportunity. Again, watch out for that Georgia game, because I think we'll probably see him get capped this year, and that obviously makes the most sense to be able to do it against them. I think that we need to start looking at sooner rather than later because I think we need to look at our center options. We've got 2 great inside centers. We've got Jesse Kriel, Lekanya, big question marks about him. Canan Moodie not played a lot of rugby at 13. Ethan Hooker, even himself, has not played as much rugby at 13 as we'd probably like. So if these are our genuine outside center options, we're going to have to find time to have a look at them. And then last but not least, Evan Roos. Well, he was called into the squad because of the lack of number 8, given the fact that John Augustus is injured, Cameron Honeycomb injured as well. Jean-Luc Dupré, however, has been preferred this weekend in the number 8 jersey, not probably where he plays most of his rugby, but it's a bit of a setback for Evan Roos because this would have been the perfect opportunity for him to have trying to get himself in the mix. Yes, he's coming back from injury. We expect to see him ready for Italy. But this would have been a great opportunity for Evan Roos in front of his home crowd against Barbarians, which will probably be quite an open game, which could suit him. And I think he's got to try and keep pushing that radar because the biggest problem with him at the moment is not his URC performances. He was the URC Breakthrough Player of the Year a few years ago. He's been one of the best, most consistent performers for the Stormers the last 2 to 3 years. His issue at the moment is he's not been able to replicate that when he's played for the Boks. Now, he's had to work really hard to get into the Boks squad. In fact, he was actually an addition to the squad rather than a primary inclusion. Unless he gets onto the field and proves to them that he can play, he'll continue to be one of the fringe players, which I know sounds maybe, very obvious, but that's kind of the biggest problem at the moment. Everybody understands the talent we've got, but we're starting to wonder if maybe he is test quality because he hasn't quite been able to have that blockbuster performance in the green and gold jersey that we've seen him have for Stormers. And a Barbarians game could have been a great opportunity. So whilst I'm very glad that Jean-Luc Dupré is getting a chance because he's kind of been in and around, I think played that 1 game last year. Apart from that, has not played at all in the last sort of 5-6 years, despite being around a lot of squads. Evan Roos would have loved that opportunity. So when he does get the opportunity, and again, potentially against Georgia off the bench, the likes of that, maybe he gets caught up against Italy, he's got to make sure he takes it because he just needs 1 or 2 big performances in that jersey, and all of a sudden he can become a genuine contender for the block number 8, especially if it is a long-term injury to Cameron Honeycomb. I'm gutted for John Augustus. I wonder if that's his chance gone. You know, he had a chance to be able to come in and potentially stake a claim, and now he's injured, not going to get that chance. What do you think of these 5 players? Where would you have liked to have seen them fit in with regards to Barbarians or against Italy or against Georgia? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.